Joe Carney. I've got Counselor Allen, Counselor Bay, Counselor Thompson, Counselor Driscoll. Sorry. Those two. Counselor Lovejoy Grinnell, Counselor Green, President Hudson. Guys like to introduce yourselves and sort of walk us through?
Jimmy Oliver, Deputy Commissioner of Parks and Rec.
Julie LaFave, Commissioner of Parks and Recreation.
Anne Marie Deegan, Administrative Officer.
Okay, I don't know if you want to just sort of...
Sure. So just an overview of Parks and Recreation. We offer a variety and we're spread out across the town. We have our youth recreation, senior recreation, adult recreation, aquatics, pools, rinks, dog control, forestry division, planning, and grounds. So we're overseeing over 1,000 acres. We're serving every single age in the community from birth to death, and including our canines. So we are all encompassing.
So, I don't know if we want to get started. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Maybe programs from last year to this year.
Yeah. Yeah, programs from last year to this year. Any new ones, anything we've gotten rid of, any big changes?
So programming wise, we held steady with where we were last year. We're constantly looking. In the past year, we've hired a new senior citizen coordinator. So right now we're assessing how we can serve more of the seniors, but we haven't actually begun to offer more programs. Our summer camps are enormously popular, so we haven't gotten rid of any. The big change that we've had is that we have released a comprehensive brochure, and our aquatics lessons now are all advertised per time. We also unveiled online registration with enormous success. We're serving we've cut down hugely on the administrative time involved in our processing of registrations. So now that we've looked at the process of putting people in programs, now we're going to look at our actual programs themselves. But we haven't made any major changes to the programs that we offer because they all seem to be very popular at this point in time.
Can I ask a question, Councilor Carney?
Yeah.
With your new online registration, have you guys seen an increase in the revenue as far as what it was into years in the past?
It's too early to tell at this point because the only thing that we've opened up is our camp registrations, and they would fill in the past and they are filling now. So it's too early to tell. I think that that's a better question we can ask at the end of the summertime, because starting May 1st, we will offer our swim lessons online, which has never been done before. I do know that in the instance of golf, and Joe can correct me if I'm wrong, but usually it would take a few weeks to get to the numbers that we got to in the first weekend. So we're going to do a full assessment once the summer is over.
Okay.
I'd like to know, and we were speaking about the aquatics yesterday. What is the difference between, and this has come up in the past, what is the difference between what the county pays, what the city pays? How much would that mean if we were able to raise it to that amount? How much does that actually mean in the budget?
Salary-wise, Mary?
And I guess the last thing is, if we did something like that, do you think that it would provide a larger pool, or do you think that it would not really significantly make a difference?
I'm going to actually ask Mary to speak to that, just because she's been running our aquatics for many years, that she could talk to that.
Unfortunately, every year we fall a little bit further and further behind what the state and the county are able to offer. Behind the state this year, we're at least $4 behind the state, closing in on 5 or so, and per hour.
Okay.
I actually did not call the county this year to see. They're usually about $1 or $2 behind the
I
state.
can look that up.
But we are always behind, but everybody's short this year. I mean, town of DeWitt is looking, everybody's looking this year.
But my question would be, say that we're $2 or $3 behind the county. How much does that, how many hours of do we have invested in our lifeguards?
I do have the county rates too as
I
well.
was gonna say per week?
The county rates, their head guard is $17.54, assistant is $15.53, and their regular guard is $14.32. So I don't know how that compares.
So we're 11.
So $3
something.
difference.
So it's a $3 difference at the county and probably closer to 5 at the state. How many hours a week
Yeah, we
per
run for,
lifeguard?
what, 6 weeks? So
We run for 8 currently, and we try to stretch. The larger pools, we try to open 2 weeks early at half hours so that we can get closer to a 10-week season in. So we open later in the day for 2 weeks and then full hours for about 6 weeks total for sure. And then whatever's left, we try to run another week at the end of the season after the lessons end.
Okay, so I guess, Julie, if you could just let me know what the calculation would be for the total. I mean, there's X number of people in the pools times,
If we matched the county rate,
if we match the county weight.
Okay.
And the last question is, do you think that it would make a difference? Do you think that it would bring more of a pool in, or would it be just the people would receive an increase in their salaries?
I think we'd get a larger pool at the more experienced guards because they tend to leave us once they know they can find more money somewhere else.
So the experience would stay?
No, yes, the experienced would stay. We, over the past couple of years, have seen an increase in the number of new guards we have to hire, and last year we were really close to 50-50. So experienced guards to brand new, never worked before guards.
Thank you.
I can get that number to you.
Can I throw off some
Yep.
questions?
Yeah.
Okay, page 195, I would assume that under the salaries, that's the pay increases, the 2%?
You're looking at the parks admin.
Yes.
That'd be some of it, but most of those people in that line are in the executive, so the rate change didn't really play into account too much there.
Yeah.
There's only
3 or 4 that are.
3 or 4 people that are CSEA, that rate would have changed.
Okay. And then I'm looking at the overtime wages. Why is it projected so high?
Are we talking the same admin?
Yes,
$300 for overtime?
750, it's.
No, that's a part-time employee
Okay,
for the entire year for our forestry division.
okay. And I might as well just keep going so I can be done. The tree planting, do we contract with the Onondaga Earth Corps to do that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's your workers and their workers, and some city residents, right?
I believe so.
Onondaga Earth Corps, I believe, is 100% residents. Is that correct?
Yes, it is, 100%.
Okay, from the different communities.
Yep, different neighborhoods, a lot of kids from the south side. It's all young adults, so no one's over 26.
What's the age to go in?
Well, Young Adult Corps, which is the group that does contracted work, are 19 to 25-year-olds. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Let's jump to 199, the night shift differential. What does this consist of?
That is employees that work before, I believe, 7 o'clock or after 7 o'clock. So anybody that is working early mornings or late at night get a 15-cent pay differential per hour of those times worked,
Union
per
contract?
contract.
Okay. Okay, and then we're gonna go to the Clinton Square maintenance. And I see that it zeroed out. There's no more maintenance needed?
No, that line doesn't get budgeted, so that is in reference to the money that we collect from the festivals, and then we move that money into an operation line as needed. So it's not a budgeted line.
All righty then. I'll be done in a few minutes, Joe.
That's fine, take your time.
Okay, and I'm looking at the spring on page 200, the spring basketball league, 16 to 18. I'm just curious, we're picking that back up because we didn't have any information last year.
You want to know why we brought it back? Is that, I'm
So
sorry.
I just want to know, are we picking that back up? Because we didn't have it last year, correct? It's not,
Stand up to the mic, please.
Yeah, it's one of the leagues we definitely didn't run last year. Didn't get a lot of signups last year, but I think with the interest in team programming this year, I think it's one of the things we're looking to pick back up.
Okay. Lifeguards, 201. You said they're the residency. What was the breakdown for that?
We hire 150 total guards. We have not yet determined this year. We don't turn away any qualified resident who's has the certifications to become a lifeguard. But
do we know a number? Do we know how many?
where we're at currently, right now,
So far, we've tested 45 returning city lifeguards, 13 returning non-city, 4 or 5 new city residents for lifeguards, so we're at 50 for city residents, and about 6 new non-city we've tested, with no promises, obviously, of hire, but, so we're closing in on 70. We need 60 more minimum in order to open all pools for all hours that were planned.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna jump to 207, but maybe you can answer all of these for me because I'm seeing a lot of zero out. Why such a
a lot of
staff
what? I'm sorry.
reduction? There's a huge, on different lines, a huge staff reduction.
You're on page 207?
Well, starting on 207, but as I go through, I see that on certain lines that it goes to 0. So, just curious to know why we have such a reduction in staff.
The public information officer was unfunded last year, so we're just taking it out of the budget this year, so that's one of the zeros.
And then do you mean the rec leader and then the rec aide?
Yeah, all of the zeros out, and then I see that you're adding in, yeah, you had 0, then you added 1, but I'm just looking at the ones that are zero.
Can I add to that question? Because there's a host of summer aides too, where I see that the positions were shifted, maybe from a $10 an hour position to, or maybe more appropriately, one I've seen shifted from $12 to $13 an hour. And so if I can add to her question, are those unfunded positions, or are they funded but you're just not filling them? Were some of the zeros on?
The rates changed because of the rate of
Minimum wage.
so we just adjusted those up. So it just moved from like a $13 to a $14 or $12 to a $13.
Okay, and to piggyback this also, the one thing I noticed is, that a lot of people have been moved around or bumped up from level 1 to level 2, but if my math is correct, we have almost a 20 or 21 person reduction in our lifeguards. Is that going to affect the staffing at the pools? Are we going to have to cut hours?
So it's difficult in recreation, where in other bureaus or other departments in the city, you have actual numbers of vacancies and numbers of positions. We vary greatly, so we don't really actually look at the number, because you could say we need 10 lifeguards to run a pool, but if one person can only work part-time, then you're going to add it to 11. So we don't necessarily focus on the numbers, we just focus on the dollar amount. So while it may look like we've reduced it or increased it, we're just required to turn in a number of positions, but we just look at the dollar amount, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Okay.
So on page 199, there's the operating supplies and expenses, 1.4 million. Do we have a breakdown of
I'm
that?
sorry, can you just give me, what page, 199?
199.
What line was that?
It's the
Operating supplies and expenses.
405.
The 1.4 million?
Yeah, is there a breakdown of that, or what's included in that?
A good amount of that is our mowing contracts. Okay. 1.4. So that covers hardware, forestry supplies, fence, pretty much any of the repairs that we have to make in and around the parks, our greenhouse, our inspection software, paint, pool paint. It's pretty much anything that we need to open the pools and the parks and to keep them running and malfunctioning.
Is there any way you could
And
send us that breakdown?
Yes. Anne Marie can take that. Yes.
And another thing, I could be totally misremembering, but I feel like last year there was a line item for the fountains specifically, or at least we had a
It's
number.
usually in the capital.
Okay.
It's in the fountains are in the capital.
But the operation of them, like I feel like Hanover Square operation of the fountain was in our operating expenses.
That's lumped in with the pools. It's pools and fountains, so it's pretty much any water work that we deal with is in that 405 line as a bulk number.
Okay. I'm sorry, which line is that?
The one you're looking at.
Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, that's all I got.
It'll be on the breakdown that we forward to you.
Along with the fountains, because we were actually talking a little bit about this before. Look, I know we've discussed this in the past and talked about it in committee meetings. You know, the fountains have somehow turned into pools, and people swim in it a lot. I'm just wondering if we've had conversations in the past. I've had it with the previous administration. As soon as the new one came in, I've talked with them about it. Have we talked about doing, like, putting chemicals or something, like chlorine or something, to keep it so that if people are going in there, if somebody gets sick or something from it? I mean,
I believe once you add some kind of treatment, you need to have a trained person to monitor the levels, and you have to have an actual treatment unit to disperse it into the water.
All right. I mean, we have signage up that says no swimming and things like that.
We do.
Correct? Okay. And is law determined that that's sufficient to, keep us from being liable for any? Okay. In professional services, we nearly doubled the budget for that. Did we bring somebody new on? Is there some sort of new?
Is that
I'm
under the
sorry,
recreation?
199 in parks, grounds maintenance.
Is that Southwest?
No, it's grounds. So that's gonna be in there. I believe, until I find it, I believe that's where the deer and tick money is.
Extra 75.
So that's $75,000. The other half of that money will actually end up being moved to SURA position that's in the process of being moved into the regular salary line. It's just, it's where the money resides today.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Hi, Commissioner. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
I spend a lot of time in the parks, so I'm very grateful for the work that you do. I have two kind of general questions. One is about the registration. I know you and I have spoken a little bit about this. Can you comment at all on whether the move to the online registration had any impact on enrollment of city versus non-city people? Go ahead.
So I reviewed the numbers 5 days after the online registration began, and I actually reached out to Councilor Green about this, but it was less than 2% were non-residents. So it's not a huge problem. So the problem with online registration is that because there's zip codes, that you might be a Syracuse resident and you might not be, the software allows you to say this zip code is or is not. But because you have some people who might have a mailing address that says Syracuse, but they're not, the computer doesn't know the difference. So at this point in time, we can't add that feature. We can pay, I think it's $1,800 to have every single city address input into the system, so that moving forward, if somebody put an address and it recognized it as a city address, it would accept those people. And if they put a non-resident that was within that zip code, it would say you are not eligible for this. But I will say that it's not a huge problem. And some people may be upset that we even allowed 2% in, but it's not a 50-50, it's not even a 25%, but it's less than 2% that are non-residents. In the one program in question, that Camp Hoover, there was one non-resident.
And how does it compare, again, globally for the summer rec camp program this year versus last year, non-city and city? Did the online registration change that dramatically, or is it about the same?
I'd have to look, because I will say that oftentimes the registrants that we get on the day that we open registration is not necessarily the list of participants who actually end up in the list by day one, because there's a lot of people who either find other options, they kind of use this as a holding place, and they pull, so there's a lot of moving around. So I'd have to look at where we were on the first day of every single program last year.
Interesting. Well, I'll just say again on the record that I know that there were folks who were used to the waiting in line procedure and who missed out this year. They knew if they got there at 3 o'clock in the morning that they would get their spots, and they were shut out 2 or 3 or 4 minutes after the registration opened. So if there's opportunities for, and I've talked to the commissioner about this, to open up more spots, especially for Camp Hoover.
We're pretty much limited because all of those camps take place at other agencies, other businesses. We are absolutely limited by what they will allow because they run their own camps all summer long. They register their own participants. We subsidize. They allow us usually 1 week, so we're kind of at the mercy of what they will allow. So we did look into Camp Hoover, and that's an all-girls camp. So I mean, they allowed us 1 week to have co-ed. And we did look to see if they could allow another week. They can't because they've already registered. And they also can't just accept more people per week because they're health department certified and regulated. So they have to meet their certain ratios, so they can't go over. But we are looking at that. If we ran programs in-house that were certified by the health department, that's a whole nother process, but we could look at that and then we would more or less be unlimited. But I don't know that it would be as exciting for kids because it's not the field trips and the specialty camp. But we are always looking to see how we can change and how we can serve more of the community.
Okay, thank you. My other question or point of discussion is, and I know we are already paying lifeguards the lowest rate of state or county. I spend a lot of time in the city pools with my kids, and what I would suggest gently is that there might be some implicit bias training offered to your lifeguards. And the reason I suggest that is there is not all guards, maybe not even the majority of guards, but there is certainly race bias, I believe, playing out, and that may be for a variety of reasons, but and some education about using power in that role. Certainly at the parks that my kids go to, there's a whole bunch of white guards, and there's a whole bunch of kids of color in the pool generally. So I would suggest that.
We will absolutely look into that. We don't like to hear anything like that. And training has not begun for the season, so you've got us at a good time that we will talk with Mary to see if we need to bring in a special trainer, or we will absolutely take that comment seriously.
Cool, thanks. That's it.
I have one comment. Thank you. As Bryn said, I'm in the parks all the time also, and you do a lovely job. I know that the 2nd District is looking forward to possibly getting that pickleball court up there this year. Neighbors and residents are sending things in. The Magnarelli Center is you can't get a place up there, I hear. You can't get in, so this would give them another opportunity, the people, the seniors. And no, I don't know what pickleball is. So, but in the mayor's budget,
fastest growing sport in America right now.
In the mayor's budget, he is requesting increasing support for teen programs at Southwest Community and Boys and Girls Club, and restoring staffing at Westmoreland Park on the city's east side. Does this take away positions from the Parks and Rec?
Do you want to answer?
Or are these additional programs that he's looking to add that maybe should be run by the Parks and Rec?
Do you want to?
I would say it's to increase programming where there's a need. I would say mentorship. I would say life skills, especially with the things that are happening in our community. I think there needs to be an emphasis on teen programming because I believe that demographic is the one that need us the most. And there's not a lot of intentional programming for them. And so I think, giving monies to Southwest and the Hamilton Street Boys and Girls Club, I think is a great thing. And as far as Westmoreland, I think it gives us a great opportunity to serve the kids in the community on that side of town. And some of the programs that I think would be, beneficial. As I said, mentorship, character and leadership. healthy and life skills, career exploration, just preparing our teens to take jobs, to go into trades, to be around positive role models. All those things are definitely needed.
But can I jump in there? I think some of the staff, you're shifting directions on how you're dealing with the staff.
So it won't change any of our current workforce, and no one will lose a position as a result of this. So currently, the city sends 5 staff, a full-time and 4 part-time, to each of those locations, to Southwest and Boys and Girls Club. So there's a lot of difficulty on our end because some of them are unionized employees, but they have to follow our rules and the union rules, but they're having to work at another facility and working under their rules, and there's a lot of gray area, and it makes it very difficult. So the idea is that we will provide this money to Southwest and Boys and Girls Club so that they can hire their own staff. They can increase teen programming, and then the staff that were at that facility, we now can pull to increase our programming. That's how we will now fund Westmoreland without having to change our numbers. And then we don't need 10 at Westmoreland, so now we can strengthen some of our own centers. So if you look at it, it will strengthen.
Okay, I get it, and I'll be the jerk. I really sort of struggled with this when it was brought up in conversations about. We fund a lot of these different facilities through community development, block grants, and things like that. I have a hard time saying we're going to add additional, tax dollars to essentially just allow these other groups to, I don't want to say have free reign, because that's really, I get that they're sort of tied in with what we're trying to do, but I just don't really feel comfortable. I would feel more comfortable if this was actually within the Parks Department and we were trying to do programming through this, if the money was used with us rather than, I guess, some of these other facilities. I'd be concerned about what we have that ties in, like, are there benchmarks that, okay, we want to see X amount of kids, in these programs. We want to see X amount of programs each week. We want to see, are there benchmarks that they've got to hit to warrant and earn that money, or are we just giving them $250,000 and say, okay, that's what we want to see.
So it's the proposal is 75 each to each facility, and then we haven't even talked about the contracts yet. But if this gets approved in the budget, then we go to the contract. There would be a contract written up where we absolutely would have some reporting. I mean, we're going to make them have an emphasis on teen program, and we would have benchmarks. And we would say you have to increase this, you have to serve this kind of community, or you have to provide this type of programming. It's not our intent to just give them money willy-nilly, just say, here you go, have at it, and apply for it again next year.
Okay. And if we were to do that, would each of those contracts come before the council to?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I do want to piggyback and talk about Westmoreland for a minute, because Westmoreland has been basically deserted, and those kids up there have nowhere to go and nothing to do. So I am happy to see Westmoreland being revitalized and brought back to life for those communities up there.
And if this budget passes the way it is, then our goal is to open it with the school year. So we're ready. We want to use the summer to organize, decide what the direction, with the community's help, decide what the direction and focus of that community center is, because each of our community centers seems to have a specialty or a focus in addition to just the day-to-day programming. So we would use the summer to do that and then open September 1 or whenever the school year starts.
And how many staff are we thinking about at Westmoreland?
Minimum of 5.
Great.
Okay. You got it.
Sue Boyle's not here anymore, but whenever I see her, she makes it sound like we're going to raise fees to the extent on our fields that we're going to put baseball out of business. So would you maybe just comment about the fee structure for renting the fields and whether that's going to have any impact on?
We cannot raise any fees without council approval. So at this point, there has been no change in fees. I will say that in some instances, we do have established fees on the books, but some organizations don't pay anything, but we still don't shut them out. We still allow them to use the fields. There are some organizations, though, who have expected the city to pay their ref fees and some of their organizational fees. So we would like to get away from that, but we don't want to make any of the fields to the point where none of our organizations can use them. We want absolutely all of these groups because they all serve a great population of their own or a portion of the city, so no, we don't want to. And again, you guys would have to weigh in anyways if we changed any of our fee structure.
Okay, then I have a comment that I make. I think I'm going to make it every year, hopefully not forever, but the Action Basketball League that I grew up playing in and Jesse gave me my first job coaching in and all these other things, similar to like the class, race, segregation, tensions that can be in the pools, I would say that allowing the basketball league to run by high school makes it more segregated than if it were not run by high school. And I like the summer as an opportunity for people who are typically separate to play together. And that's the way it was when I played, and I always thought that was an opportunity to play with other people, to meet different people. And it's one of the few spaces when you're like young, you haven't graduated high school yet, you can actually build friendships across these lines where we're too separated. So I would push again that we go away from the high school model and go where we still invite the high school players, but we like mix them up a bit more. Then grass cutting, how does you mentioned how that's the biggest, like one big portion of that one line. How does it work? Because for instance, do you pay per cut? Do you have a set number of cuts for the year? Is there flexibility in the number of cuts? And
We budget, I believe, for 15 cuts per season. It's 11 or 15 cuts per season. So because July 1 breaks, so there's 15 cuts left for this fiscal year, and then July 1 we'll get 15 more cuts. It does absolutely limit the frequency that we can mow. One of the discussions I would like to see is if we can start to kind of take some of that back. We have a pretty big grounds workforce of 45, and I don't see that why we can't look to see why we can't do some of the mowing ourselves, because the mowing contracts right now are about $500,000, I believe, which is a big expense. So that's why sometimes the grass is long, because we are limited. The grass is I'll admit it, the grass is sometimes long, but if I only have 15 cuts and we have the type of spring where the grass grows extremely fast.
I know it gets long sometimes, and I actually think that's kind of okay. The thing I would say for the extra cuts, if there were, is, and people on Facebook do this all the time, like they cut the leaves. Like they do a cut. Like the grasses kind of stop growing at that point in the fall. But if you do like a late run, you get rid of all the leaves. And then if you do, I think, an early run in the spring to, again, get the leaves, I think it makes it so the grass looks way better. That might sound really nitpicky, but like a lot of the grass seems like...
No, it's not.
Nitpicky, that comes.
It seems really
But once we start them, though, they want to start for the season. So if I wanted to start them on April 1st because, you know, the snow's melted and the leaves are down, they're going to want to keep continuing to cut, because once the community sees it's cut, they're not going to want to let us go then a month without it being cut. So we have to be very careful. Right now, we're kind of hoping to make it to May 1st. But the grass is already getting to a point right now.
So you're basically saying once you open it, it's a free-for-all, like one.
Well, because they're contractors, they have their own schedule. We're not their only customer. Right. Some of them have 50 of our parks or green spaces, because it's not just parks, it's green spaces and medians, parklets, it's all of these. I mean, I think it's a combined 150 or 200 locations that they mow.
I guess I was just thinking more about the snow removal contract where we have a little more authority to say go, like now go. And I was thinking maybe if there were a couple, like instead of just set 15 where maybe if the contract could have a little more control to be like, we would like an early or a late.
So I think this is the last year of the contract. I think they do, I believe this is the last year. So next year we'll all have to go back out to bid. So if we want to change it, but we would have to probably adjust our budget to accommodate whatever changes we're going to look for. It's 5. So, and 3 of them might have five locations, and then the other 2 or so have a very long list.
It might seem funny, but I don't think we have money to hire people to rake. And that seems like the alternative. So like raking doesn't hardly ever happen in a park, and then it looks a little brown for a lot of the year. Okay, last one. And I've said this before too, and I don't know if everybody always thinks it's popular, but cameras. I definitely think cameras on entrances to parks could be an asset to minimize like negative activity at night and to prevent dumping, which occasionally happens in various parks. So
we're getting ready to install security cameras at some of our facilities, meaning our golf courses and our rinks. But in order to have the kind of cameras that IT wants us to have and the city wants us to have, you need to have remote access, which means you have to have Wi-Fi, and the vast majority of our parks do not have that. So we are working to getting Wi-Fi at some of the parks that have facilities, but something like Lincoln Park that has a high dumping rate, we don't have Wi-Fi there. So installing cameras, those are obsolete cameras that you want to, that's like, I think like the VHS kind of camera.
Julie, didn't we just vote on a batch of the parks that we're getting?
That's the internet that we're installing right now, and we have the cameras already in hand. So once the internet installed, we have the cameras ready to go.
Question for you. You said you have 45 ground crew people?
Yes.
So have you looked at bringing the mowing back in-house?
That's so it's 45 ground crew. Some of them are custodians, some of them are MEOs, so they're not all just laborers. But that is absolutely so. We have a new superintendent who has TBD. It's out for bid right now. But we hope to have a new superintendent starting within the next month. And one of the first tasks will be to look at where we can become more efficient, because I think that we absolutely could handle some of our parks in-house. The only thing is that we don't have a lot of mowers, so we would have to look at our capital budget, because we absolutely would have to purchase
But
in order to.
the long run, wouldn't it be beneficial?
I think so.
Because if you buy the equipment up front, you have it, and then you just have to every year pay for the crew.
Without really looking at it, I think that we could handle taking on some of our larger parks. I think it's the smaller parks where we have all these parklets where it would take us a lot of time to transport a mower there, drop it, just to do a space smaller than this room to pick it up. So I think that there's a happy medium that we could find, that we could do some in-house, but then still contract some of it out.
And then I have a not in the agenda item. Kirk Park Speedway. Have you been getting calls about that?
Actually, I have not.
Okay, well, LaToya and I have gotten emails about the speedway going through Kirk Park and how kids are trying to cross the street and they think they're on 81. Is there a way we can slow them down?
If it's a park road, so with it.
Well, I tried with the speed bumps, but I was told that if somebody tears their bumper off their car, they're gonna sue us.
So I'd have to look to see if it's a park road or if it's just a road that falls under DPW, because around Onondaga Park in the summertime, we put the speed bumps. So if it's a park road, I don't see why we couldn't do that at Kirk Park as well. So I think that's something we'd have to touch base with Jeremy and DPW about, to see which road, if you can actually send us an email, if you have more specifics on which road we're talking about, then we can look into that.
Okay, thank you.
While we're on Kirk Park, can you give us an update on I got an email about we talked about what is it called?
Gaga Pit.
Gaga Pit, okay. And that was from the center, the kids at the center, they requested that, or that's part of their programming?
So the Gaga Pit is an octagon-ish shape. We had, when we got that Imagination Playground, do you guys remember when we got that Imagination Playground last year? Part of that was St. Joe's. I can't remember which facility, which organization came in and wanted to do a service project. So they did a service project. They wanted to build something, and they also wanted to clean up the park. So their service project was actually constructing that. But it's open for use by anybody in the community. They just would have to bring their own ball. But it is the intention was that for our center kids to use it.
Okay. And then the tennis court and the baseball fields, are there going to be any updates? And with the tennis court, no one uses the tennis courts. So is there something that we can update it to where people that actually live in the community can use it? Because nobody uses it right now.
I would say overwhelmingly the city has a lot of tennis courts. We are having these conversations actually quite often with people in Berry Park area and Schiller Park area and Kirk Park area. I think that we do have more tennis courts than we need. We don't want to eliminate them outright. We still do tennis programs in-house that are free to the community, but we've had conversations, and we'd like to, each community is individual, is unique, but there's ideas to turn tennis courts into futsal courts or into dog parks. There's a few different ways that you can repurpose them, so we are going to start having those conversations.
Okay. And can you just make sure at least for Kirk Park, can I be included in the conversation?
Yes.
Okay. And then the baseball field, are you guys going to do any updates, or is that just as is?
Ball field maintenance is an area that we're trying to make improvements on right now, but we have a lot of ball fields and a crew of about 1.5 to do it right now. That's an area that we're exploring to see where we can make improvements as well.
Okay. And I know last year we touched on the concessions at Kirk Park. Did that go anywhere, or have you guys looked into it to see if that's possible to get a concession stand, a permanent concession stand?
My understanding with that, when we met with them, my understanding with that was that they were going to try to fundraise for that with our support to install it there, but we don't have any capital money dedicated
would
to.
Would it fall on the Kirk Park coats, or would it be Parks and Rec?
If it's a concession stand, from a lot of our other parks where there's a standing Pop Warner or a Little League, or cheerleading, a lot of times it's the individual leagues that will fundraise for it and then install it with our support.
Okay. And then the ownership is city still?
But usually everything with it inside of the building is theirs.
Okay.
And Julie, one more. The park behind ITC, is that ours?
Which park is that? Oh, yeah, Rossler Park, yes.
Yeah, because I had conversations with some of the kids from ITC, and they said that the school district, they wanted to get the park for the school. What's going on?
Honestly, I've heard that rumor as well, but I don't know what the truth to it is.
Well, there's a discussion about an ITC football field.
Okay,
So, okay, so you don't,
I don't.
okay. All right, I'm done.
We have a tennis court over there too, that's unused.
I will add it to the list.
What do you have against tennis, Latoya? What do you have against tennis, Commissioner Allen?
I don't know how to play.
So, I think just to sort of finish up, because we're gonna, with dog control. Two questions. One, I know I've had conversations with folks in the past about trying to get some of the officers like bulletproof vests. I've had conversations with the research department about seeking out grants, trying to work with the police department to team up and get that. Because I sort of have a concern, because it sort of leads me into this next thing with Adrian's law that we just passed last year. Have we seen an increase of dogs taken from properties or going on to people's property to having to do that, an increase in the intake in dogs?
We seized 5 yesterday, actually, that we believe were left out all winter, and we did have an injury, actually. We didn't issue a great amount of tickets, but it's definitely, I mean, I think 2 or 3 even is too many for any dog, so we did issue 2 or 3 tickets last year, and I think they all pled guilty. But we are constantly looking. We have 2 new dog control officers, 2 seasoned ones, and then one that's been there about a year or so. But we absolutely, safety is of utmost important to us, and we stress that they look for trainings that we will support their attendance at.
Yeah, I just worry that, with a law like this, that, is probably going to be able to be used and enacted, like you said, maybe, 3, 4, 5 times. We're going onto people's property and taking their dog, and people are crazy.
The good news is though, when they do those types of operations, though, they're usually hand in hand with the police department.
Okay.
Because usually I think almost always it's usually the police department calling us in to assist. So they're usually working hand in hand. And if our dog controller officers come upon a scene where they know that they are in that type of situation, they will call for police.
So is the officer going to jump in the way in front of a bullet?
No, but they.
I'm just,
No, but I'm just saying that they. I'm just saying.
It's a genuine concern.
I'm just saying that they have, the police officers have the more of the
ones to-
training
yes.
to know how to go onto a property in what manner, and if it's safe to stay back or if it's safe to go. But they're peace officers. They don't have that training.
But it's only 5 of them, right?
Correct.
So you would only need to purchase 5 vests, so.
I just feel like
Like
it's
a
something that
neutral.
we could tie in when the police department goes in for, and I've talked about with the grant writing department, that when they go in to write it, that we should try and tack on another, 5, 6.
I do think that the union there's been that just talk in the past, and the union had an opinion on it, so we might just have to bring that back to them. Because they're all,
I'll have a discussion with Jeff
okay.
then about it.
Okay, well, no, they're not,
Yeah.
they're CSEA.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you issue them, they
They're
have.
CSEA.
Okay. I just, I've had this conversation for like on and off for the last 3 or 4 years since I've been on the council, and I just don't want to see something bad happen and then, sit there and say, oh geez, we talked about it. Not really sure why, but it didn't happen, so. Okay, does anyone else have any other questions?
One more. Can you give us an update on Onondaga Park playground and any money that might have been committed with regard to a playground?
The neighborhood association put in a request with Magnorelli's office, and the office replied to us that they were looking into it. Internally, we do not have the funds to address that playground just yet.
Thank you.
Anything else?